So this is a little video for folk involved with LinkUp, and I'm Callum Monroe. I'm a therapist and a psychiatrist, and basically myself and some other therapists are helping out LinkUp during the coronavirus crisis to support people who might be struggling a bit, and with some psychological support. And we thought that it might be useful for some people to just hear some information, hear some chat about um, different ways of understanding how they're coping psychologically, and I guess ways that they might be able to do that differently to look after themselves during this kind of strange time. And yeah, we thought it might be useful to go through a few basic topics about how to understand your feelings and thoughts and what have you. So this is the first of these little video clips, and I'm just kind of going to ramble away about a topic which is about basic human needs. So you'll hear people all the time talking about what they need, talking about their needs, talking about other people's needs. And there's a good science about that has been around and developing for at least 50 years. So yeah, we know that there's a good basis in sort of scientific research and understanding that we basically all have some basic human needs that are common to us all, and that in order to both survive and to thrive, to live well, to be healthy, whether that's physical or psychological, we need to have enough of those basic needs met most of the time. I guess in terms of getting the right balance, we're all going to be different, right? We're all different kind of personalities. We all might find some things more rewarding than others. But in terms of, so we might go around it a different way and find a different balance for each of us, but we all do need the basic same good stuff to feel okay and to be healthy. So let's start with some thinking about physical needs. And the physical needs are maybe a wee bit easier to get your head around, to understand. The most important one, the kind of cornerstone of that, is to feel, no, to be safe enough, to be secure enough. So that's things like, having shelter, having enough warmth, having protection from being harmed or from being ill. So those are that basic need to feel secure enough and actually safe in your environment and with the resources you have and what have you is a real cornerstone of all the needs. Without that, that's always going to be the one that people will prioritize the most. But all the other needs are important too. So beyond feeling safe and secure, getting enough to eat and enough fluids is obviously not something that in the modern world we often have great problems with, although that's been maybe challenged a bit more in recent times. There has been more of a challenge for many people in society to get enough food. And in some bits of the world, getting enough clean water is similarly a challenge. So that's a very basic requirement for fuel for us to be able to function. It's also absolutely essential that from a physical point of view, we can rest enough. So we have to get some sleep, but we also need to have periods in the day when we are resting or doing a bit less, using our bodies less, using our minds less, and there is a physical need to get enough rest. And I guess the other flip side of that almost is we also need to use our bodies. We need enough physical activity. That might be thought of as exercise, but it's just to be moving around enough, and it's good to get a little bit of exercise within that, but we all need some physical activity to keep our bodies functioning okay, moving all right, working reasonably. So that's the crux of the main universal physical needs that we all have: to be safe, to be secure. That's the first one. To get enough food and fluids, to get enough rest, and to get some activity, to get enough activity for our bodies and our minds as well. So as you can imagine, with the changes that have happened recently, you'll all be aware that for many of us, those needs have suddenly been challenged. The most obvious one is that the need to be safe, that a lot of us maybe have taken for granted more in terms of being safe for our health, not being at risk of a serious illness and becoming seriously ill very suddenly. That's obviously changed with the coronavirus. But obviously there's a knock-on effect for all sorts of other needs as well, with the lockdown process of responding to the coronavirus. So in some ways, in order to try and protect our most important need, to prioritize that, to stay physically healthy and not get sick, to protect our family from being physically healthy, to protect other people in our communities, we in some ways had to compromise or have more of a challenge around meeting our other needs. So all of a sudden, a lot of people financially, to be able to provide enough, to have enough money to meet our basic needs for shelter, for warmth, to pay bills, those, you know, to also to have enough food to eat. And those things all of a sudden are, for some people, for many of us, more of a challenge just now. So we need to be able to adapt to that, to these challenges, to find ways that we can do that in order to remain healthy enough. If you know, just being in a situation of being locked down with your family or on your own or whatever your circumstances are, for various reasons, it might also make the last two needs of getting enough rest and getting enough exercise more challenging. So maybe you get plenty of rest during the day, but maybe it's harder to get good quality of sleep at night. If you're worrying about finances, if you're just napping during the day and then maybe not so tired at night, if you're not managing to get any exercise, especially those people that are completely self-isolating for whatever reason, it might be harder to get exercise in the house. So again, we need to be able to think about how do we adapt to the situation we're in. We can't do the normal things that we would do to meet these basic physical needs and to feel, you know, comfortable with how we are physically, to remain healthy enough. So there's definitely different challenges around for all of us, and how we meet those might be quite varied, but we all need to be able to think about whether we're managing to do that well enough. So the other side of basic human needs that we understand from all the research that's been done on this is about our psychological basic human needs as well. So, you know, it's crucial. If we don't meet our psychological needs well enough, we're likely to become fairly quickly feeling overwhelmed emotionally. If we're overwhelmed emotionally, we're not going to be able to think clearly about our practical physical needs and how to get them met. And yeah, we're going to feel particularly bad about ourselves, and we're not going to be able to do the things we need to do, and to do those practical things to be able to look after ourselves. So the emotional needs and meeting them are kind of very important to be able to meet our physical, practical needs as well. If we get overwhelmed emotionally and we just shut down our thinking and we're kind of unable to do things. So again, we can think about different types of basic universal human psychological needs. And the first one is a kind of similar to the first physical need, but it's the need to feel secure and safe enough. And that might be a bit different. It might be that you know you have enough money to cover yourself this month, you're getting enough food, you're getting enough sleep, you're getting some exercise, but you might still feel anxious, insecure, unsafe, because there's a lot of there's always uncertainty around. There are always things that we can't control, that we might have fears about. So there may be various reasons why that need just to feel safe and secure enough in ourselves is not present. It may be about the relationships we have, about the circumstances we're in. We might get our basic physical needs met, but emotionally it really might not feel secure and safe. So that's the first, and again, a very important basic human need, is to feel safe and secure enough. The next one that's very important and a bit different is that sense, that feeling of having enough control over your life. So feeling in control enough. You know, that might get talked about as autonomy or independence sometimes, that sense that you have some control over your own destiny, that you can kind of make your own decisions and sort things out when you need to. Enough confidence in yourself almost that you feel you can manage things, you can cope with things, you can get through. So that sense of feeling you have enough control over your life. And there can be many things that could challenge that we'll think about in relation to COVID in a minute. The next and very fundamental one, maybe a bit harder in some ways to get your head around, but it's also very simple. It's about feeling loved, feeling cared for, feeling understood enough. It's that kind of emotional nurturing. It's almost like the equivalent of the nutrition, of the fuel of physically, of eating and of fluids, is like our physical energy, but we really need to get enough of that because we're a social species. We need enough of that sense of being cared for and loved and understood, both by being caring towards ourselves, but also by being able to get that sense of care from other people. And alongside that, and kind of similar, the last of the sort of big psychological basic needs is to feel acceptable, which is a bit different. It's more about that acceptance of yourself as a human being, as both having some strengths and being respected for the things that you can do, but also of being accepted for your normal fallibility, the normal way in which we all make mistakes and get things wrong, and to still be accepted even though you're somebody that might do the wrong thing or might screw up sometimes. Because of course, you know, none of us can be perfect. None of us are bulletproof. None of us always make the right decisions. So it's important, again, both that you feel yourself, you can accept yourself as fallible as well as your strengths, but also that you feel other people will accept you that way too. Yeah, and although that might not feel like people often show you that their acceptance of their own fallibility, but whether people accept it or not, or show that, of course, we're all like that, even if people like the American president sometimes thinks that they're infallible and perfect. In reality, none of us really are. So how is coronavirus challenging you in terms of trying to meet those psychological needs as well? Because, of course, if you're trying to feel secure and confident in yourself, it's very difficult just now to have certainty about things, to be sure about how things are going to pan out for all of us, but for each of us individually. What is going to happen with our jobs? What is going to happen in terms of finances a few months down the line? So there's an increased challenge in these uncertainties. We're usually very used to a certain amount of stability in society, in this country, and to kind of things to be reasonably predictable as to how things are likely to go. But at the moment, to be able to feel really secure and confident and safe in what's happening now and what is going to be happening over, the immediate future is, obviously more challenging for us. And again, we need to try and adapt. How can I reassure myself? How can I accept what things I do have some control over, and kind of accept the things that I can work on and change and focus on that, but also accept the things that are outside of my control, like the rules that the government is giving us about how we need to behave just now to be safe and to look after one another. So that sense of trying to get enough of that sense of safety and security just now is definitely more challenging and needs thought, and maybe having to adapt how we are internally with ourselves, how we respond when we feel a bit unsafe or insecure. What can we do about that? The same very much about feeling in control and feeling confident. We have had to give up some of that control at the moment. We have limits of what we can go out and do. So inevitably, we have to find our sense of autonomy and sense of being able to do things and achieve things in other ways just now than we would usually get that. And then, of course, feeling kind of nurtured and feeling cared for and loved, and feeling acceptable enough, feeling good enough, being accepting of yourself even when you might not be able to do as much as you would usually do. These things are definitely challenging when we get a lot of these needs met by other people, even though we need to be able to do some of it ourselves. A lot of the time we rely on connections with other people to feel cared for, to feel loved, to feel understood, to feel respected for who we are. So I guess just now there's more of a challenge about having to think, how do I do some of that for myself? How do I emotionally nurture myself? How do I accept myself as good enough, even if I'm not busy doing the things that you usually make me feel like I'm good enough? So there are lots of challenges just now in meeting both our physical needs and our psychological needs, and we need to be aware of what they are in order to think about how we might adapt to that and rise to that challenge. We are all in this together in one important way, in that we all do have the same needs. We all want to get back to feeling safe again, being safe again, and being able to have the freedom to live our lives the way we usually would and get our rewards from life and get our needs met the way we usually would. But at the moment, these changes mean we're all affected. It's normal to be feeling a bit insecure, to be struggling with things, but we all need to think about how we try and adapt and meet our needs in the circumstances we find ourselves in. It's an opportunity for some of us to learn different ways to look after ourselves. That may be very challenging, that may be very difficult, that may not be the instinctive ways we would go about things. I know some people who maybe instinctively rely on themselves a bit more and don't feel they need relationships and connections with people as much. And they might be finding this easier, whereas those people who are more sociable really get a lot from connecting with other people. The limitations of phone calls and video calls might just be finding that really hard. So how we get what we need might be different, but we're all for sure facing challenges and how we adapt to that just now. So the next wee video I'm going to do is more to talk about feelings and how we're feeling just now, what our feelings mean, how we can respond to our feelings. And I guess what I'm going to try and do is persuade you that some of these vulnerable feelings that we will all have at the moment are actually really healthy in this kind of situation where we're being challenged, or in any situation where we're maybe not easily getting what we need. So yeah, if anyone's interested in that, feel free to listen into the next video too. And in the meantime, just look after yourself and stay safe.